What do you wish that someone would have told you about all the things that you were going to experience in your career?
Ooh, buckle up because when you don't say no to things, it opens up the world.
Welcome back to After the Routine. I'm your host, Rochelle Provo, and if you haven't done so yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Today, we're talking about a topic that most athletes, parents, and coaches don't consider when they think about the sport of cheerleading, and that is marketing, publishing, and event production. And today we have Shane James to talk all about that. Shane is the founder of Cheer Media LLC, which operates Cheer Daily, the Cheer Awards, and Stunt Daily. He began his career in cheerleading media in 2005 and has worked for 10 years at Inside Publications, leading some of your favorite magazines, including Inside Cheerleading, Inside Gymnastics, Inside Dance, Cheer Biz News, and the Coach's Handbook. He's also the co-author of Cheerleading from Tryouts to Championships, and has been involved in marketing, event production, and digital media for more than 2 decades. A former LSU cheerleader, Shane served for 8 years on the USASF National Advisory Board and was inducted into the UPA Hall of Fame in 2011. His career has also included covering 10 gymnastics world championships and 2 Olympic Games. Today, he's focused on building independent media and live event platforms that celebrate the people, stories, and businesses moving cheerleading forward. So thank you so much for being a part of this podcast.
That intro, I love that intro. That was awesome.
Well, I am so excited to dive into all things because there's so many aspects of that that I think parents, coaches, and athletes are going to be really interested in. So can you start with, how did you actually get started in the sport of cheerleading?
I actually kind of fell into it. I grew up I grew up on a chicken farm in Mississippi. So I don't think a lot of people realize how rural it is. When I was little, I only had family friends. And then when I got into school, I found a few people that rode the bus with me, and we still live miles apart. So at one point they invited me to a tumbling class, and I just absolutely fell in love with tumbling. And then it kind of went from there, and I started following my friends who were girls at the time into what they were doing. I tried soccer, didn't really like that. And then at some point it came up that I could tumble, that I should be the mascot. So in middle school, I became the mascot. And then once I went to cheer camp, I really just fell in love with cheerleading. And then from there, we were actually a really good high school team. We won state championship in, I think, 1999, 2000, somewhere in there. Aging myself here. But yes, we were good. And then I had this dream of doing All-Star because obviously if you are really good at high school cheer, then you want to move into the really competitive side. But I couldn't do any of that until I started driving. And that was an hour away because keep in mind, I live out in the country. So
Yeah.
I was just doing everything I could to get off of the farm because I just knew that wasn't my future. And I just gravitated towards technology. And then I found cheer. So once I started driving, I got into All-Star, and then we were really successful. I cheered for Central Mississippi Cheerleading. I talk about this video a lot, but that year that we won UCA, back when it was really cool to win UCA, right before Cheerleading World started, we did this TikTok lib, full hill stretch TikTok again to arabesque. And it was one of the moments in the milk house where it makes your hair raise up on your arms because everyone was just so into that routine because we had just hit. So I go back to that a lot. But that was a cool period. And then once I was pretty good at All-Star, and then I had a major accident, and that derailed my mission to go cheer at Kentucky. And then I kind of scaled things back. And then once I got healed and rehabbed, I broke both of my ankles actually, but I decided to try out at LSU, and then just absolutely fell in love with the campus. And it was closer to home, but it wasn't in Mississippi. So I was still getting out.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where I started that whole transition of getting into cheer.
Yeah. And then you also, I don't know if a ton of people know this, but you actually competed at the first cheerleading worlds. So what was it like to experience it then, and then flash forward to today where you get to cover stories every day about it?
Well, it's interesting because it was such a big deal for us because we were one of the first four. I think we got 14th, but one of the first 14 teams. But like I said, we had just hit that amazing routine at UCA and gotten that bid. So we were just pumped to have even been there on a paid bid. So it was a cool experience. And then from there, I actually fell into working for Inside, but we'll get into that shortly.
Yeah. So then, like you said, you went on to cheer at LSU. So as a collegiate athlete, what are the big things that stood out to you that you now use every day?
Time blocking and learning that time management skill, because I didn't have that skill until I graduated high school and got into college and realized that what I thought was education was not the same as what I was expecting. So that was a big learning curve for me to learn how to study and to really focus myself. And then obviously also manage what you have as a student athlete. And obviously being a cheerleader at LSU during that period, that was when Nick Saban was there. So we had just won a national championship in 2003. And then we were about to win another one very shortly after. So you can just imagine the amount of stuff that we did as a cheerleader through this 2004 to 2009 period. I think I did 5 Final Fours and 3 national championships. But like it was, and then we had baseball also going on. And then we cheered at gymnastics and cheered at volleyball. So like they just had us so busy that I really felt like I was never in class. So it was literally just trying to figure out time management and keeping it all together.
Which I can imagine that now being in your role in marketing and publishing and digital media and event production comes in quite handy.
Yes, and keep in mind also, True Daily is not my full-time job. I also work in technology. So my full-time job, I run marketing for a software company here in North America, and it's a really cool job that I just absolutely love. And I'm going into my 5th year being here, and it's cool to be able to manage a software marketing budget and being able to learn what I'm doing in the software side and applying that to technology and media.
Yeah, I know it's always interesting. Like I run a marketing agency and we have two aspects, which one focuses on cheerleading and tumbling, the other focuses on service-based businesses. And a lot of the ones that you really wouldn't think about, like funeral homes or like your electricians, but all the things that I learned there, it's so translatable and I bring into the cheerleading and tumbling side.
Yeah, yeah. I learned so much about SEO being in the software side and how important that is. And when you look at the cheer industry, a lot of people don't really focus on SEO. So that has been something really strategic that we have done. And I think that's why Cheer Daily has gotten so successful. And we're also serving at the top of nearly every search result now. So I think our average position is somewhere around 7. So that's above the fold. That's really good.
Yeah. And so you kind of alluded to it earlier, but how did your love for cheerleading and the sport evolve into where you could pursue a career in publishing and marketing?
Yeah. So while I was cheering at LSU, Katrina happened. So that was a major transition. It's funny because we were still doing promotional things, and I think we had just gotten done with Hell Week. So it was right before school started. So, I mean, literally a couple of days before school started. But we were filming a movie. I think it was Lindsay Lohan, Just My Luck. I had gotten cast as an extra. So I was in New Orleans literally a couple of days before, and we had dismissed it because it was hitting Florida at that time. And when it hits Florida, you think it's going to go away. Well, it had passed over Florida and gotten back into the Gulf. And my mom called me a couple of days later and said, "What are you doing about this hurricane?" And I had no idea. Well, it ended up being Katrina, and I took a year off of school, and my parents had a chicken farm. So there was just an enormous amount of damage, and they were out of power for almost 3 months. So it was a lot. So they also couldn't afford to help me through college. So in this process, I got a message from a former friend that says, "Hey, there's this job in Atlanta, this magazine I think that you would be good for. Are you interested?" I was like, "Yes, it's Atlanta. I would love to go to Atlanta." It was an offer from Inside Cheerleading magazine, and took the job. And then shortly thereafter, I was handed the book. I tell people a lot that it was kind of like Devil Wears Prada. And I just learned how to do it. We keep in mind that he had just started Inside Gymnastics in 2004, and that was during the Olympic year. And then we had launched Inside Cheerleading in 2005. So I came on board shortly after the premiere issue. And then I managed it from there. I think I managed it from issue 4 in till I left in 2013. So hundreds and hundreds of issues. But yeah, I literally put everything I had into it for that entire year and learned how to do it. And then finally had saved up enough money to go back to school. And so at that point, I'd gotten back on the team at LSU, and I was running sales and marketing for Inside Cheerleading, and then LSU Cheerleading, and then also obviously trying to graduate as fast as I could from LSU because I knew I wanted to go back to Atlanta to run this magazine and cover the Olympics. And I'd really fallen in love with gymnastics, so that was a lot of that period. But I spent from then for a good 10 years doing that. And then in that period, we also bought McFadden's titles. We bought the Coach's Handbook in 2009. We also bought CheerBiz Views. And then I took over those titles until I left. But I had quite a few titles on my hands at the time.
And then for people who don't know a ton about like what those roles look like, what are some of the tasks that you got to do as part of those?
Well, there were very few people in our office. So that's one of the things that I think we were just so overloaded in tasking 6 magazines a year per title. We were constantly on deadline. So we had a graphic designer. I think we had 2 at the time. And then we had one person in sales, and then I kind of ran the marketing and sales and editorial. And then we had the publisher. So there was a good 7 or 8 of us. So I managed a lot of hats. Most of the days I was the one shipping all of the back issue orders. I was also the one sending out all the email blasts and doing all the marketing. And then at that point, it was just Inside Cheerleading and Inside Gymnastics. And then shortly thereafter, we launched Inside Dance with, I can't remember what year that was. And then we had the Coach's Resource Guide. And then in 2007, we wrote the book with Rizzoli Publishing. And then, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, we could do a whole hour about my whole life at Inside, and then covering the Olympics, and then becoming best friends with Carly Patterson. So, yes, there's quite a lot.
Yeah. And so I think that is one thing that is really great for people who are creative and like a day that never looks the exact same. It's where marketing and publishing, like that is a great option for you if that's something that you're really passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things I tell people is I love that feeling of going to the mailbox and getting all of that work in the mail, because there is quite a bit of work that goes into just publishing a magazine and then obviously printing and then all of that process. But yeah, and once social media started, I think the world really got social media in 2009. And then by 2013 is like that whole 3-year period is like when social media really took print to the ground.
So then, based off of all your work at Inside Publishing, how did that help you understand the cheerleading industry more?
Well, it was going to the events. And at that point, I developed a relationship with all of these customers. Like I go back to when Tammy owned Aloha. Like I was going to so many of her events every year that I was now on her event team. So I was helping her set up these events. And I've taken all of this knowledge of like working cheer sport and the largest cheerleading events in the world, and now I'm able to plan my own event. So yeah, we'll get into that too. But yeah, I've really I just dove in and gave it everything. And I think that me doing that is what's paying off in the dividends, because I have the relationships and I didn't take no for an answer. And I literally knocked down the doors of all of these EPs to become advertisers with me. And then obviously when I left, they kind of followed me over to Cheer Daily when I decided that that was what I wanted to do next. So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. And I think it also highlights the importance of collaboration and working with people. Like those relationships are really key.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I cherish all of these relationships because I couldn't like I it still blows my mind that we had almost 60 companies come together for the Cheer Awards. So like that alone is it's so cool. And then we had a very short setup window. So to have all of them there together helping us set up, well, I wish everyone could have been there because I was just blown away.
So then you talked about it a little bit. So you decided to leave Inside and then you went and then Cheer Media and Cheer Daily came about. So how did you think about that? How did it evolve into that process to go and start those companies?
So in this process, obviously, I was managing a lot of sales. We were doing quite a lot in just advertising sales, and I managed the majority of that book of business. So I could see the commissions were kind of going down. So I started having hard conversations and saying, look, if we can't figure out a way to go digital and build this so that we're not only publishing magazines, then we need to look at that. But at the time, the leadership just said no, he didn't believe that, and we never really put any budget into digital. So I just couldn't see a path forward, and I had put so much of my life into building those other titles, into making them what they were, and I wasn't getting back what I was putting in. So I just made the very tough decision to leave. And I literally just walked away and took a break for a while and tried to figure out what I wanted to do. I ended up waiting a year, and then we had gotten quite a few people reaching out to me saying that I needed to start my own thing. So I think it was September, start of the season, 2013, that we launched Cheer Daily. And it actually launched as Cheer HQ, to be fair. And then we moved it through a couple of brand iterations from there. And then I landed on, we had tried to start publishing a magazine. So it was going to be a Teen Vogue style. It was called Cheer Magazine, very simple. And we did that. We did, I think, 15 issues before I just finally said to pull the plug on that one. And we solely focused on online. And then from there, it moved from being solely into Cheer Daily in like 2018, and then went through some ups and downs there. And then my mom passed away in 2021, and that's when I decided that I was going to go back and go all in on this and give it my all. And now it's just absolutely been me.
I love that.
Yeah,
So
cool.
then, as you've grown it, right, and you've been able to cover the sport and highlight all these things, you've also been able to create opportunities for writers, marketers, content creators, and then other professionals in cheerleading. So why was that really important for you?
Well, I look back, and there was a lot of volunteer writing and a lot of just living within the very limited budget that we have. And I look back now, and it's because we were printing, and there was a lot of times that the postage was more than the printing costs. So like, people don't realize that just most of like, when you subscribe to a magazine, you're really not helping them cover the cost at all. It all comes from the advertising. Most of the times when you subscribe, it's basically paying half of the postage for the first 3 issues. So that's something that you've got to realize too. But as postage increases, it was just getting more and more and more expensive to publish a little 64-page magazine. And like, there were several times where it was like $15 just to ship 25,000, 30,000 magazines. So like, that would just eat into your advertising budget when you're publishing like a $50,000 book. And when I say a $50,000 book, that means that it was making about that per issue. So yeah, you can start doing the cost, and you'll see that there's not quite a lot of profit margin when you're printing. So that's why I kind of made the decision in 2018 to just stop printing, because it was just eating into the margin so bad. And then obviously, when things started to really move heavily digital, that's when I started really focusing on it. But obviously, we had a lot of time in the pandemic, so that's when I really got reorganized and rebuilt everything, and then we really full scale from the pandemic, and that's really what has fueled, I think, the majority of our growth.
Yeah. And then what does your team look like now?
We have quite a few people, actually. We've got a photographer that shoots primarily all of the marquee events for us. My husband, obviously, is getting very involved the more that we grow.
Yep.
He doesn't have a cheerleading background, but he's definitely learning the business side and just helping us run. We have a couple writers that write periodically. We have just hired someone to come on board to do social media and help with marketing. And then we're working on an event team so that we'll hire some people to represent us at events in the region.
That's awesome. So many opportunities for people to get involved in the sport, even after they decide not to be an athlete anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, there's plenty of opportunity. I mean, if you have a passion, I say you really dive into it, because it's easy to find your lane, especially in cheerleading, because there's just so much opportunity.
Yeah. So then what are your, top 3 tips for people who are wanting to go into a career that's in marketing or publishing or digital media?
Def Well, I tell people this a lot. The internships, I had no idea what I wanted to do until I fell into the job at Inside Cheerleading. And then from there, I realized that I wasn't the best writer or maybe the best editor. I really liked the marketing side. So I started gravitating towards the marketing, and then I realized I was good at that. And then I realized I was good at website building. And then when I went back to LSU, I took a few internships because I obviously wasn't full time at Insight Publications. So I really started using those internships to figure out where I wanted to be. So that's my first biggest tip is definitely find an internship and figure out where your passions are. Second tip, if you like writing, write every day because you only get better the more you write. And then third tip, if you love social media and that's what you want to do, you want to be a content creator, my advice is you dive into the analytics and then you figure out what your voice is. And then you figure out what your style is, because once you get those few things down, then you're going to take off as a content creator.
Yeah, we could call it a whole episode just on creating your personal brand.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. I love that you say write every day. Like, I have a book that was years ago given to me while I was in my post degree, which was in public relations. And it was Everybody Writes by Anne Hadley. And like, anytime I have anyone who's interested in marketing, I'm like, you need to read this book. Like, it is all about like writing every day and just writing. Like, you're going to start and it's not going to be great, but you have to develop that craft as you go along.
Well, that's kind of what Cheer Daily came from, because back then it was only a goal of posting every day. So obviously that meant I was going to write every day. So that even if it was like 3 paragraphs, and going back and looking at some of the stuff I wrote a long time ago, I'm like, wow. But yeah, that's kind of where it came from, is just Cheer Daily. It's something cool or positive every day. And yeah.
Yeah. So with that, you have Cheer Me Day, you have Cheer Daily, and then you decided this year in like 3 weeks to plan and hold the first live edition of the Cheer Awards in Orlando. So can you talk more about like what the process was to planning that and then running the event?
Yeah. So we had actually been in conversations with a few sets of coaches conferences in the industry about doing the cheer awards attached to a conference. And it didn't work out with the national conference. We had planned on doing it on that Saturday night. It just didn't work out. And so we went to another site and they kind of started dragging their feet, and then it was literally 3 weeks before, when they were starting to plan the trucking and everything, that I got a phone call from Deep South that says, "Hey, if we donate the trucking for the cheer awards, would you be willing to do this in 3 weeks?" And I was like, "We didn't have time." So yeah, we jumped on a few phone calls and then launched this crazy, ambitious idea to try to bring the cheer world together. And we pulled it off, and it was a really magical 3 weeks, honestly.
Yeah. And so with that, it actually generated nearly 25 million views to the website and social media, and then had over 600,000 nomination boosts and votes from the cheer community. So what was the decision to do the nominations and the voting aspect of it?
Well, I've been doing this in some form or fashion since I was back at Inside Cheerleading. So I actually managed the voting system when I was doing the USA South VIP Awards. So I've learned quite a few things over the years. And then last year, we rebranded as the Cheer Awards, and I learned a lot more just with like the level of enterprise voting and forms that it takes to do that big of, because honestly, they broke 3 voting systems last year. So I learned quite a lot because I never thought it would get past 10,000 votes, much less 75,000 last year. So yeah, they would break one and max it out, and then have to move to another one. And then they would break that one. And then then from there, I just started searching for something that was more secure. And then T-Mobile reached out very recently, like I think it was during Worlds. And then I told them kind of the problems that I was having, because they were looking for a B2B campaign. And then they helped me build this custom web app for the Cheer Awards. And at that point, we had pretty much settled that it would only be online. But I had had this dream for the last 2 years and already had the plan in place to do the live event. So when we got the opportunity, I think that made us what we were really ready to do it because it had already kind of been mostly planned. So it really was, you could tell it wasn't thrown together. But yeah, we've had a lot of thought that went into just kind of preparing for it.
Yeah. And then why do you think it did so well?
I think the industry is craving some recognition and some independent recognition, and not only independent, but it's industry voted and industry chosen. So like the only way that we could make it fair is to make it global. And that was one of the problems with taking it to the USASF conference is like, there was pressure to keep it sanctioned events. And I'm like, no, this needs to be global. This needs to be everyone included. And I think we saw how much Australia got involved in this and why it needs to be global. So yeah, it literally just took off, and we opened nominations for everyone for the entire week, and then it became so much to manage that I started contacting friends, and I'm like, "Can you help me just kind of manage this for 2 weeks because I can't manage this, this, and this." But yeah, it just blew up, and I honestly did not expect for it to quadruple from the 75,000 community interactions last year to the almost 700,000 this year. It blows my mind.
Yeah. And then for people who maybe see events, but they don't necessarily see the back end, what are some things that people who are looking at potentially going into event management or event production would be interested to know about?
Plan, plan, plan. If you definitely need to have some experience in managing and learning events, I would go work for an event producer for a couple of years before I jumped into creating my own events because you learn a lot. And then obviously, if you can get an event producer that's your mentor that you can call on a dime and say, hey, should I do this, or this? Or like I think I called 60 people in 2 weeks trying to get everyone to come to the cheer awards. So I was just like, give me any advice. I haven't ran an event like this ever. So I really just kind of reached out to my contacts and relationships. And I think that's why everyone believes in this vision, and everyone believes that my heart is in the right place, and that we're truly doing this to elevate the industry because these professionals need the recognition.
And then what are your plans or dreams with the event going forward?
There's a lot. I mean, I have this dream because we have all of these industry leaders coming in for a great night that we could turn that into some type of learning experience. So I would love to turn it into maybe master classes the following day, but we'll have to flesh those ideas out. There's lots of ideas, but I firmly believe that if we can pull everyone in for the cheer awards like we did this year, then we need to start passing on some of this leadership and learning to the next generation.
Yeah. And that's kind of why this podcast came all about, right? Was that fact of those being able to show the path of like, there are so many athletes and parents and coaches who want to make a career out of the sport. And it's like, how do you do that? Well, let's talk about it. Like, let's get as many people as we can to talk about their past and their experience and then go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right.
With the industry and the way it is, why do you think it's really important for people to find an opportunity or even like create their own path instead of not necessarily waiting for a traditional role to be available?
Well, I think that is the generic feeling for majority of the generation today is they kind of sit back and wait for something to happen for them, and it's not going to happen like that. That's just how I feel. It was always the go-getter, and I think that's why I got off of the chicken farm, and I was the seeker of opportunities, I guess you could say. And I really encourage people to have that kind of mindset and attitude because you're not going to reach for the stars if you don't reach for the stars, you know? So that's kind of my goal is to inspire people to reach as far as you want to reach because I have been very successful at just not letting people tell me no. And when they did tell me no, I created it myself. So that's what Cheer Daily came from. So yeah, it's just not giving up and putting everything you have into it. And it may have taken me 15, 20 years to get it to that successful spot, but I did not give up. So that's my best advice.
Yeah. And like you talked about before, having those relationships, having internships where you can explore opportunities, getting involved with a wide variety of like areas that you are passionate about or you enjoy, those are all going to benefit you. And then just keep going. Just don't give up. And if you have a dream, go after it.
Mhm. Yep. Anybody can be a content creator if you just put in all 100% effort.
Yeah. Okay. So then you also talked about the fact that you have a full-time job and then you have all these other projects, which is very typical in this industry. And so for you, what tips do you have for people who are juggling multiple projects or responsibilities or roles that then they can take going forward?
Time blocking. I know I've mentioned it a couple of times, but it's been a true lifesaver for me because I learned this in college and have to have the ability to make yourself sit down and do it at that time. And you'll figure out as you go that it only really takes about 15 minutes if you only focus on that and you move the cell phone away. And so, yes, just time blocking those minutes and not procrastinating. That's a big thing too. And I think that's really why the Cheer Awards was successful because once we said yes on going for that, then we literally got all of the like major things done at the beginning and then started working on the end stuff that we needed to pull it all together. So yeah, just time blocking and trying to be organized and structure.
Yeah. I also think that being able to have a deadline, like you talked about, where Cheerwards has a 3-week deadline, then setting personal deadlines for yourself also helps you keep track of like, okay, no, I can do that tomorrow, or maybe I can do that next week. It's like, no, it needs to get done right now.
Yes, yes, yes. There was lots of 18 to 20-hour days for during the Cheer Awards 3 weeks, as you can imagine.
So, with that, what has stood out as being the most impactful way of finding and going after opportunities in the industry? Maybe you've talked about them before, or maybe there's something that we haven't talked about yet that you want to touch on.
Calling and asking for help. I mean, like you wouldn't. A lot of people don't do that these days, and that's I think was also one of my biggest weaknesses. And I really just reached out and was like, "Hey, what are you doing the next 3 weeks? Can you help me on this big project?" And very few people said no. So like that, it was just so heartwarming because everyone started to believe in that vision. And yeah, it's like you just gotta reach out and ask, develop that mentor network, and don't be afraid to reach out because people will help you.
And I love 2 quotes. The one is, "You don't know what you don't know." And there's probably someone else who does know. So being able to do that. And then the second one is, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take."
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so with that, you've done a lot of different things in the area of marketing and publishing and event production and digital media. But if you weren't doing your current role, what other role in cheerleading or youth sports would you want to do?
I would love to create an event solely focused on the rec and youth. And I know that there are events that are already out there, but I think that market is so severely underserved and I don't know, I need to learn it a little bit more, but it's so big and so powerful because you've got all of these people that are volunteering for the rec and youth side. So, and they do everything they can to keep it affordable. So I just love, love, love that whole area of cheerleading, and I would definitely get more involved in that area when and how I can.
Yeah, and creating a more inclusive space where everyone can access the sport.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so my final question that I ask every guest is, if you think back to like your 14, 15, 16-year-old self where you're like falling in love with cheerleading and templing, what do you wish that someone would have told you about all the things that you were going to experience in your career?
Ooh, buckle up because when you don't say no to things, it opens up the world. I ended up working the Olympic Games in London. I was literally front row seats for the vault from the London Olympics from Michaela Moroni. That was a magical, and then to be going to the Team USA house with Carly Patterson, and yeah, there's quite a lot of those experiences, and then why I kind of gravitated towards covering the cheerleading Olympic side. But yeah, just be glad that you fall in love with cheerleading, and it will give you the most amount of opportunities that you can ever imagine.
I love that. So before we go, where can people find and connect with you?
Definitely follow Cheer Daily We also have Stunt Daily that is getting off of the ground and slowly growing as we put more time and resources into it. But we're Cheer Daily on every platform. You can also reach out to me on my personal Instagram. It's at Shane O'Mac. And then you can reach out on our contact site on cheerdaily.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast, Shane.
Yes. Thank you, Rochelle.
Perfect. Well, make sure to tune back in 2 weeks where we're going to answer the question, what happens after the routine ends?